prayer and a pledge. Heavenly Father, thank you for this day. Thank you for all you do for us. Help us to do with this council what you would have us do to help our citizens. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. One and unborn.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Powell?
Here.
Mr. Bronner?
Here.
Mr. Bishop?
Here.
Mr. Boehner?
Here.
Mr. Tommen?
Here.
Mrs. Kroger? Here. Mrs. Edichico? Here.
So at 7 present, we have a quorum for business and a quorum for legislation. Next up, approval of minutes from the June 7th regular meeting.
So moved.
Everybody have a copy? Everybody read it?
Second.
Okay. So we have a motion by Mr. Boehner, second by Mr. Bronner to approve the minutes from the June 7th meeting. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? This carries by voice vote. And up next is Mayor's proclamations.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. You know, first, it's wonderful to see you all here tonight. It's great to have a crowd, and I want all of you to know it's an honor for me to be able to read proclamations and put proclamations together. And you know, every council meeting we have is an important meeting, but it's awesome every now and then for us to be able to take the time and recognize some of the outstanding things that people do here in our community. And quite honestly, we don't get a chance to do it enough. You know, Reading was built by incredible people. We have wonderful people here today that continue to build it today. And again, it's nice tonight. We're going to start by recognizing Denny Albrink. And, you know, I've told people, as many of us up here, have a deep family history here, many, many years, all 4 grandparents born here. Lived their entire lives here. Both my parents lived their entire lives here. They spent their lives talking about the wonderful people of Reading and what they did. You know, established wonderful churches and excellent schools and wonderful organizations and incredible people. And in my humble opinion, you know, Denny Albrink has contributed right up there with the very, very best of them. And, you know, we could go on for quite a while on Denny alone here tonight. You know, we could talk about his family, the incredible Albrink family, and their contributions to the city of Reading. We could talk a long time about what Denny did through his church. You know, an incredible contributor to his church. You know, we could talk about what he's done through many of our organizations and with many of our businesses. And you know, one of the neat things from Denny, I believe you were Safety Service Director 12 years. You know, and our Safety Service Director's job is really, in a way, hard to describe because they do so many things. So many things. Number one, I always like to call him our Director of Safety and Services. And as all of you know, this building never closes, ever. We're open every second of every minute of every day, all of them. And, you know, to be the director of those services and the things you go through and the things you confront, you know, making sure that we're providing the best possible city services that we can provide each and every day in, day out, is a remarkable accomplishment, you know, in and of itself. And Denny not only served us in that role, you know, he moved away for a while, came back, worked with the service department over in Blue Ash, was very beneficial to us in that role. You know, we provide mutual aid to other communities. We accept mutual aid. Daryl was a huge help, or Dennis was a huge help to Daryl Courtney, our Chief of Public Works, and on and on. And then as a clerk of council, and you know, and then he became our ward chair, our 4th ward chairman, or councilman here. I'm so sorry, it's been a long day, and served us well there. So I know this, you know, as a mayor, it's nice to be surrounded by experienced people and knowledgeable people. And Dennis has been a huge help to us in so many different ways here. And again, an honor to do this, Dennis. And you know, before I read it too, I want to thank Dennis personally for what he did for me. You know, over the years, many times I'd leave these meetings or have days where Dennis knew I might be upset or concerned about something, and so many times back into my office with his wealth of knowledge, with his patience, with his wonderful advice. And I want to thank you for that, Dennis. And we're going to keep you busy here for many years to come. But this proclamation reads, whereas Dennis Edward Albrink was born on Saturday, June 16, 1945, to beloved parents Edward Joseph and Bernadine Catherine Albrink, nee Aarons, and whereas Dennis grew up in Reading, Ohio, along with his siblings, Marlene, Ronald, Donald, Kathleen, and David, and whereas Dennis graduated from St. Peter and Paul Grade School, he graduated from high school from St. Gregory Seminary, he received a bachelor's degree from the Athenaeum of Ohio, I hope I got that right, and earned 3 master's degrees, a master's of education and a master's of public administration. He got those degrees from Xavier University, and a master's degree from Mount St. Mary Seminary. And whereas Denny was faithfully married to his wife Carol Nee Henniger for 43 years, and their marriage was blessed with 3 loving children, Angie, who married Jim Candle, Suzanne, who married Brian Bischoff, and Carla, who married Josh Kocher. And they have 7 amazing grandchildren, Corey, Mackenzie, and Kelsey Candle, Tyler and Nathan Bischoff, and Elena Kocher. And whereas, in addition to being a devoted husband and a loving father, he has remained an active member of Our Lady of the Valley Catholic Church, which was previously Our Lady of the Sacred Heart. He served as the president of the Pastoral Council, a lector, and a distributor. And whereas it is fitting and proper to recognize his significant impact of volunteerism within the Reading Republican Party, having served numerous official roles within the club. And whereas over the span of 40 years, he has honorably carried out many civic responsibilities for the city of Reading, including serving as Safety and Services Director, working as a clerk of Reading Council, and as 4th Ward Councilman, and serving as a member of council, as a member of the Recreation Committee, and chairing the Service Committee. And whereas we, the city of Reading, wish to extend our sincere gratitude to Danny for his substantial contributions to the city through his humble willingness to serve others, his love of his community, and his unmatched Danny Albrink affable personality. Now therefore I, Robert Bo Bemis, Mayor of the City of Reading, Ohio, do hereby deem it an honor to present this proclamation to Dennis Edward Albrink and encourage all citizens to join together in honoring Mr. Albrink for his years of virtuous service to our great city.
They asked me if I was going to give a speech, and most people know I like to talk. I've cut this down to 45 minutes, so too long. Again, I would like to thank the City of Reading for this proclamation. Sort of outlines a lot of the things that I've done. I have been very honored and privileged, and feel very blessed to have served the City of Reading in a lot of different capacities over 50 years. One of the things you forgot was I was a summer dispatcher, police dispatcher. You didn't forget it. That gives me over 50. So, but yeah, again, it's been great. I've worked with a lot of really great people over the years: the police department, the fire department, the service department, and at one time the water department that we had. So it's been something that I'll treasure for the rest of my life, however short or long that might be. But again, thank you for this recognition, and I appreciate everybody that's been elected here. It can be a tough job, a lot of tough decisions that you have to make, but then hopefully everybody will make those for the betterment of the community. So again, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Awesome. And next, the honor of recognizing our Reading High School boys baseball team for this year. You know, a team that was very, very talented, very, very well coached, and their head coach is here tonight. You know, great pitching, great hitting, great defense, a great group of young men who served our city well. You know, here in Reading, you know, we love our sports. We do. We love our athletics. Football, basketball, wrestling, track, volleyball, you name it. We love it. But baseball has always had a very special place in the hearts of Reading residents. And Reading history books will tell you there were baseball clubs and baseball teams back into the 1800s here. Teams that traveled the country and did well, and men's softball teams that traveled the country and did well. We've had excellent girls teams, six state championship boys teams, and this team served us so well this year. It wouldn't have surprised me a bit if we wouldn't have been here tonight as state champions again. You know, they lost in a very tough game to a very good team. And anyway, proud of what you've all accomplished. And I know your coaches are proud of you, your parents are proud of you. You serve your school well, your school's very proud, and so is the city of Reading. And just a lot of fun to watch, and appreciated being able to do that. But this says a proclamation honoring the 2022 Reading High School boys varsity baseball team for an excellent season that ended as district champions. And says, whereas the 2022 Reading varsity boys baseball team finished the year with a 20-win, 7-loss season. And I believe quite a few of those losses were to schools much bigger than us. Whereas the 2022 Reading's varsity boys baseball team finished 11-3 in a very tough CHL league, very tough league, defeating Wyoming 11-8 to secure the outright championship. And I believe the first one in 10 years, RJ, the first outright. And they beat Wyoming twice, and it should have said that in here, and I apologize that it didn't. Always an accomplishment. Wyoming and all the teams in CHL, they're tough competitors. Whereas the 2022 Reading varsity boys baseball team was crowned the Andy Ramsey Memorial Tournament champs, always a great accomplishment. Whereas the 2022 Reading varsity boys baseball team, they got a bye in the first round of the state tournament. They earned that. They beat a very good Claremont Northeastern team 4-2. I think it took 2 days to accomplish that one with the rain. They beat a very, very good McNicholas team 2-0. Beat a very good Benjamin Logan team 4-1 en route to the district championship, and again lost a very tough game in the final 8 of the state. So now therefore be it proclaimed by myself, Robert Bo Bemis, that Section 1, that myself, my administrative team, and council congratulate the Reading boys varsity baseball team for a successful season and for bringing honor upon themselves, their school, and our community. And whereas the mayor, myself, my administrative team, and council recognize the achievements of the Reading's boys varsity baseball team and commend them for their sportsmanship and for the conduct they displayed. The boys baseball team members are Cam Ellis, Joel Steinkoenig, Caleb Mitten, Benny Hess, Ethan Street, Connor Davis, Casey Hinton, Jack Nash, Micah Bowman, Connor Tallman, Ben Kroger, Charlie Hess, Louis Hess, Cameron Young, Dakota Kirby, Vince Edichico, and Dirk Conrad. You know, a solid team from top to bottom. Very good ball team. Head coach R.J. Hayes. R.J.'s a long-time Reading resident with a deep family history here as well. Assistant coaches Evan Marsh, Jake Overbeck, Garrett Edwards, James Singleton, Tyler Androne. I believe at least 4 of the 6 of you were born Blue Devils. And also the statistician was John Stat. But again, boys, congratulations again. Thanks for a wonderful season, and thanks for making us all look good. So with that, RJ, if you want, I'll give these to you to distribute, if that'd be all right. And any you can't, please get back to us. And then one other tonight, another honor. We have the Ladies Auxiliary from our American Legion here tonight. And you talk about an active group of women here in our community that have done us good year after year here. You know, fundraisers, they help us with our fireworks every year. They've now started a Taste of Reading again, which is a great benefit to all of our city. So Cheryl, if you want to come up and give your presentation. While she's coming up, I want to remind everybody the Legion Festival is July 2nd and 3rd at Koenig Park. You know, as told by Bruce Swenson, I guess the festival itself goes from 5 to 11. That's Saturday and Sunday evening. The fireworks are at 10 o'clock Sunday evening, July 3rd. But I think there's a men and women's softball tournament that goes all day virtually, the 2nd and 3rd as well. So with that, Cheryl.
Hi, we are the Ladies Auxiliary, Unit 69, and wanted to thank everyone for supporting the casino night and reverse raffle we had in March. Each year we continue to raise more and more money for the fireworks because of the support of the community that they give. This year we would like to present a check for $4,000 that will go towards the fireworks. We want to keep the tradition of having the 4th of July fireworks in Reading and wouldn't be able to do this without the support from the community. So thank you again for help keeping the tradition alive.
Awesome, awesome. And just so everybody knows, that pays for a good amount of our fireworks this year, and it's a huge help to us as a city for you all to do that. It's, you know, I tell everybody every dollar we get gets fought over from the police department, fire department, public works department, parks and recreation department, and we're very thrilled to receive that amount of money. So, and now you can all stay and get purgatory reduction by. Or you can leave and be happy, whichever you choose to do.
Oh, man, Danny.
Mr. Mayor, did you want to get your picture with her?
What's that?
Do you want to get your picture with her with the check?
You know something? We will get that. I'm sure that will get here.
Stop the check.
Stop the check.
Where's Cheryl?
Where'd Cheryl go?
You know what? Cheryl knows where to find.
Okay, you can do it any time, but
We know where to find Cheryl.
Okay, well, with the crowd emptying out, next up is audience asking participation. I think there are some people here who are interested in that. Come on up one at a time. So just so you're aware, I'll boil it down. There's a paragraph I'm supposed to read, but it comes down to this. You get 5 minutes. You got to state your name and address. If you've pre-registered, you don't have to do the address.
little cheat sheets for you folks so we can go quick.
All right, Jim.
My name is Jim Murray, formerly 21 Magic Lane, now kind of homeless, kind of looking for a house, living with my mother-in-law. Okay, I wanted to thank the city for getting back with me on my information, my formal Freedom of Information Act. And this is the mayor and Mr. Ross's reply, and it took 2 years to get it from them. First, they copied the zoning minutes of 1989, which was also presented to them May 7th. And then I guess I was confused about the 3 lots, but then they copied part of the Dusty Roads maps from 2020 and 2022. And so I copied the minutes for you, and as you can see, they highlighted it for you, that Tommy Bemis negotiated the deal on that. And also they on the next page, page 3, which was presented during the meeting on May 7th, The 3 lots, 3 homes, well, they also, it also states a public thoroughfare. No, and the big key word is no, down at number 4, no additional development will take place without the proper approval. Now, on the next page, I gave you a copy of that map off Dusty Roads, which they commonly numbered 1, 2, and 3. And you can read his explanation or whatever. And I copied the building permits that they said was proof. Now, on the next page, after the yellow, I just gave you a nice picture of what Magic Lane is. Now, if you look at it, the blue, there's a reason that Tommy fought to get it. It's a 20-foot right-of-way. By all means, there should have only been one house there. But the city gave Bonnie permission to build 2 additional homes on that lot as per the minutes in May 7th. Now, the next page, if you look at it, is a survivorship deed. Now, I highlighted, it was for Bonnie and Jerry Rack, but the premise that they're saying is 2, 3, and 4, and that was the 3 lots they were talking about. Well, it's actually 1 lot at the time that Bonnie bought it. 1 lot, not 4 lots back there. There were only 3 lots. And it's kind of 30 years later, Mr. Ross was using the map from Dusty Roads. And then the next thing I give you is the Reciprocal Driveway Agreement, which, again, if you turn on the second page, you can see all the names that were signed, which is all Bemis's. And then on the next page, parcel 1, I highlighted that. That again shows that the lots 3 and 4 were actually 1 lot at the time Bonnie bought the property. And then to close out, I gave you the description of the dedication of Magic Lane, and on the back of that is the drawing of the approval, which was March 13th, 1990, which was after Bonnie bought the property. It was filed on the 5th of 17th, 5/17/1990, again after Bonnie Bemis bought the property. So, as far as the city, here's a map of the dedication, which shows the 3 lots at the time. Now, how did the 4th house get built? Because I asked for, as it states in the minutes of the meeting, number 4, that they would have to go through. No additional development will take place without the proper approval. I have yet to receive where the proper approval has come from, and yet the 4th house is up there. So, all I can say is, how did this happen? Nepotism? Arrogance? Ignorance? I don't know, but it definitely shows some sign of, I'll let you finish it. I'll give you this.
Thank you, Mr. Murray.
I don't want any more part of it.
Thank you.
And Bo, in closing, the one time I was up here, you told me to be a man and go down and talk to your sister about this. I'm going to throw it back at you. Why don't you become a man and tell the city what went on at Magic Lane?
The city well knows what went on with Magic Lane.
No, they don't.
Each one of those homes was built with a permit. Each one, Jim. Now, how many years ago, Shelley? How old's that, the last house? 2 years? 3 years?
3, I think.
This man did not complain during the building of that home. It took months. So anyway, they were built with a permit, proper permit with the city. So
I think his complaint is he hasn't seen the permit.
he hasn't seen the permit.
It's not in here according to what he just said, but we'll move on. we'll,
I didn't catch you didn't see a permit. Believe me, that house was built with a permit.
I'll check back with you later on that. Other audience asking participation, please step to the microphone. You have 5 minutes. Please state your name and address.
My name is Lee Kaler. I live at 2328 Hunt Road. I'm here to ask the City Council to hold off passing the new tree ordinance that, as I was at that subcommittee meeting a week ago, the new ordinance would completely outlaw all street trees. I know that street trees can cause problems. Mayor Bemis has been very generous in explaining his position to me, and I know he is sincere, and I don't doubt anything that he has explained to me. But I believe that a total ban on all street trees is a sledgehammer approach. I feel that street trees can also be a positive to aesthetics, a positive to a community's overall quality of life, and those things add to a community's desirability, which down the road adds to a community's property values. I'm not here tonight to say that I have the answers. I don't. I just learned of this a week ago and was really a little bit stunned. I do know that other communities do exist or find a way to have street trees. Cincinnati even goes so far as to plant them and pay for them entirely. If you go up to Evendale, you'll see street trees. I moved here from Blue Ash 2 years ago, and Blue Ash has a program where they have an arrangement with a local nursery, and if you avail yourself of that, they will help offset some of the expense of planting street trees. So obviously some communities find a way to have some of the positive as well as mitigating some of the problems. I'm hoping that there is some middle ground to this new ordinance. I know that maybe it's a voluntary tree committee. I know that the National Arbor Day Foundation has long had a program where a city community checks off a number of boxes, and in return they get a nice piece of paper and a sign to put on the city limits entrance where it says Tree City USA, for example. Maybe a permit process of some type. Maybe a list put out by the city of these 10 species or whatever number are acceptable to the city to use as street trees. All of this has been studied in the past, and, excuse me. This is a book I've had for over 25 years. It's from, put out by Penn State University, cooperation with the U.S. Forest Service. 22 states went in on it, including Ohio. But it's a whole list of fact sheets for each of a number of different species and varieties of trees that are considered acceptable in the right situation as street trees. I would hate to see Reading lose all of its street trees. I'd hate to see Reading Road start to look more like Coleraine Avenue, or even closer to home. Drive south, go under Cross County Highway, and that next stretch of a mile or so in Roselawn is pretty bleak and uninviting to my sensibilities. I don't think there's an army of people ready to rise up and plant street trees like it's the Oklahoma land rush. I just drive around, and I'd say about 98% of the homeowners in Reading are perfectly happy to have an empty tree lawn. That's fine. That's their choice and their property. So I'm not out here to lead a revolution or anything like that. So thank you for listening.
Thank you, Lee. And I'll tell council, there's very few people I admire and respect more than Lee Kaler here, so well to listen to.
I'll bring my prop only in case it's needed. Bob Ashbrook, 221 Walnut Street, Reading, Ohio. I'm here to speak to you on the same topic that Mr. Kaler has addressed council regarding, and I would...
Hold on a second, Bob. Mark, can you bump the volume up? He's a little bit low.
He's going to have to get closer.
Closer to the microphone. I'm going to give you about 10 seconds back. Go ahead.
And I would also urge council to either table this existing ordinance as it's being presented this evening, or to certainly modify it heavily to return it to what I think was its original purpose. I'll further elaborate. The ordinance before you, if it's the same one that was presented at the committee meeting last week, is titled An Ordinance Establishing the Regulation of the Planting, Removal, and Management of Trees on Public Rights-of-Way in the City, and to establish certain standards. I would suggest that the actions of the committee have resulted in a radical change from the actual intent of the ordinance compared to how it's titled. If you title something as an effort at regulating, that suggests or implies that there is the activity is permitted, but under conditions. The ordinance, as it has presently been shifted, presents as an outright ban or prohibition of public or privately planted street trees. So I would think, to ensure that the ordinance comports with the requirement that the subject matter be clearly announced in the title of the ordinance, at very least it needs to be reworked for that purpose. But beyond that, I would argue that the concerns expressed really have been dealt with in the past. The concerns being the potential impact on infrastructure and ostensibly the cost that the city would incur in repairing that infrastructure. As Mr. Kaler and others might have mentioned and noted, there was a time when the city did have its own tree commission, and the ordinance that enabled that commission or authorized the creation of that commission, that ordinance was repealed in 2013 via ordinance 2013-36. That ordinance passed by a 5-2 vote. The two councilors against it would have been Tomlin and myself, and we against it for differing reasons. It city personnel to enter private trees were deemed to be hazardous and so on, and Tom felt as though that was kind of an intrusion on private property that he wasn't willing to accept. I voted against it because I felt as though it failed to make an important distinction. It failed to make the distinction street trees that I'll call street trees generally and public street trees. I think most of us recognize that the city, through its own efforts and expense and so on, street trees on Benson Street, West Benson Street, and on Reading Road. This 2013 ordinance failed to distinguish between those, and my read of it was that its enforcement could require the owner on Reading Road or Benson Street to have responsibility for a tree that was planted by the city without his input, without his approval, without his having any say in the matter, quite honestly. And I felt as though that was an inappropriate use of public authority. So I would urge the committee to revisit this thing on a broader view and first address this matter that I'm now raising, the issue of public street trees versus trees that Mr. Kaler or his neighbors or anyone else might want to plant. A quick survey of the hilltop would reveal that there's over 250 street trees that are currently planted, and those property owners are subject to the requirements of Ordinance 2013. So any infrastructure problem that would be created by the trees that they have can be assessed against them, in my
Mr.
view.
Ashbrook, your time's
So-
up.
Sure.
Unless someone wants to.
I'll make a motion, we give Mr. Ashbrook another 5 minutes.
Second.
It won't be 5 minutes. I'm going to conclude. I think that,
Let's take a quick voice vote on that.
Sure.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Please continue.
I think the remarks that Mr. Kaler make are very valid. The presence of street trees have numerous benefits to both the abutting property owner and to the public at large. You know, it seems that if the city can, through its own money, spend dollars to put trees on Benson Street and Reading Road, it's hard for me to understand why a private property owner willing to take on the expense himself and the maintenance associated with that is not similarly able to plant a tree in front of his house and receive the benefits that flow from that, including on a day like today, the significant shading effect of trees and the reduction on the air conditioning cooling load. So I'll wrap with that and suggest, as Mr. Kaler has done, that I'm sure there would be numerous citizens who would be willing to engage on this topic and work with council or any of its committees to formulate what I would call a better response to this, rather than the sledgehammer that we've as Mr. Kaler has characterized it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ashbrook. Others, please come up forward to the microphone. You almost have to eat that microphone to be heard.
It's okay.
Please state your name.
I was a cheerleader. I'm Laura Roth. I live at 1111 Market Street. And of anybody here, I think I'm probably the most qualified to talk about street trees. I worked with Mayor Jim Brown for the street tree program in Laughlin when I graduated from Ohio State. I was responsible for them getting Tree City USA. I just found out about this ordinance today when my phone blew up. I think there might be a disconnect here. The We Thrive Reading Committee has been working on doing a street tree program and getting funding for it. I'm not sure where that disconnect exists, but I would be willing to give my personal time and my personal knowledge. I worked for the Ohio Department of Natural Resources for 30 years. I know personally the urban forester for this area, Wendy. She lives in Glendale. I think we could all work together to make this work versus a ban on street trees. I haven't seen the ordinance. I just heard about it today. But I was, a little concerned that a ban sounded very strict. Street trees add value that you can't, the benefits are far beyond my 5 minutes, and I'm not going to, use all 5 minutes doing that. But I would be more than happy to work with council, the mayor, whoever I need to try to get a street tree program where it was workable to the citizens and the businesses of Reading. I think it would be very important to have this program. I'm open to any conversation about it. I agree with these two. I think it's very important to have a street tree program. I saw the benefits it did for Laughlin, and I hope we can all work together on this. So if you need me, I'm here. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Mr. Bishop, that's your committee, am I correct?
Yes, it is.
Mark Bishop is your guy.
All right. Mr. Bishop, we'll exchange information.
Please.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Other audience participation.
James Shelton. I'm at 2401 Carroll Drive. They covered most of the things I was going to talk about. The questions that I had were kind of what was left out or was added at the end. At the end, it does add that the city can plant trees in the right-of-way whenever they choose, which is, I don't think they're going to go out and do that everywhere. But then once the city does pay for those trees and plant them, who's responsible for it? I know that it does say that the city can prune or cut or do whatever they need to the trees in the right-of-way. If needed, but what if they plant a tree on Hunt Road and the person that lives in front of that, or the person that lives in that house wants to go down and cut that tree down? Is that legal? Is that something that is possible if the city plants a tree there? And also, no, sorry, that's it. Yeah, that's been covered by everybody else.
May I address this one more time? Sorry, you won't see me here a lot.
You had a couple of minutes left on your clock.
Okay, thank you. I wrote the ordinance for the street tree ordinance in Laughlin. Of course, the village solicitor had to okay it, but there are stipulations you can put in that ordinance for who's responsible, First of all, I think we should establish a list of trees that are viable for a street tree. I planted Yoshino cherries in front of the post office 35 years ago, and they're still thriving in a tree lawn this big. Okay, so I'm volunteering my knowledge and my expertise to help with this. But a street tree ordinance is part of the process of becoming a Tree City USA. That may not be a goal of this council and the mayor, but as it is, I don't think a ban is going to serve the people of the city of Reading. So I just wanted to say I would be helpful. I could help with a street tree ordinance. And like I said, the We Thrive committee is investigating funding for this, not coming out of the tree, and I have some connection at ODNR that I've been working with. I didn't realize that We Thrive and council weren't communicating on this. So again, I will offer any of my services or my expertise, or, I'm an educated idiot, but I do love trees. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thanks. Anyone else?
Hello, Jennifer Dick, 227 Harvest Lane. I'm also here about a tree concern, but mine is a little bit different. I just heard about the ordinance today, but from my understanding, the ban would be to protect like the property and the infrastructure of the city. So I would like to know if there is an ordinance or could be an ordinance or something to protect like myself from a neighbor's tree. I've been having trouble for years on both sides. The one tree is so large that more than a certain percentage is over my property, so I'm not allowed to trim it or do anything with it because it would kill the tree. Every time the wind blows, and I've sent pictures, but every time the wind blows, my car's scratched, my car's dent, my driveway's, my yard, everything is just a mess. And it's huge limbs, it's not like little branches. And then on the other side, we have a common sewer that goes across three of my house and the ones on each side. One of the neighbors' trees are attacking the sewer line, so again, for multiple years now, we've had to put out money for a line that apparently for some reason MSD doesn't own, even though they own all the rest of or maintain all of the rest of the common lines on the street. So I believe it was $1,600 just this past week, cleaning the lines again, and the health department and MSD said those trees, if they don't get them out, they can't be cut down, they have to be taken out. And if they're not, it's just going to keep attacking these sewer lines, and I can't afford to replace everybody's sewer line every couple years. So I'm kind of wondering about that perspective as far as the trees go.
Is there,
Do you want an answer to that one? Because we get multiple complaints from neighbor to neighbor.
Well, I've
do.
had Dave up, the fire chief's been up, I've talked to Patrick, Dwight's been up. The tree company said that it's a dangerous tree. It has to be anchored because it has a split trunk at the top, which it shouldn't be. The limb, there's so many dead limbs, it needs to be trimmed. There's an infestation every year. The new owner does take care of the infestation of the bugs that come every year for whatever reason. But the house was sold to the new owner. It wasn't disclosed to him from the previous owner, so it's kind of not fair to him either, but I just don't know what to do. I mean, what am I supposed to sue this guy because his tree keeps damaging my new cars, or I don't know.
Dave, any?
That would be the solution, yeah.
So every single time I just have to sue him?
am I,
Bottom line is if the tree is on private property and it's healthy, which that tree is, the city has no right to take it down. It has no right to trim it.
Well-
If it is threatening our street or our right-of-way, we might have an opportunity to do that, but that's not the situation that you have up there. With respect to the private trees that are invading the sewer, if they were in the street lawn, we could certainly remove them. But the bottom line is that it's a private matter between you and your neighbors.
So I think,
Am I-
sorry, Jen.
Go ahead.
I'm gonna put a pause on your time because I'm gonna ask for you. We were discussing this over the weekend. What is the correct legal route that the neighbors need to take to get that accepted by MSD so MSD can handle that?
I don't know that they can. If
Because
it's a private sewer, it's a private sewer.
well, everything else was accepted with the acceptance of Harvest Lane and the dedication of Harvest Lane back
It's a
in
private sewer,
1981.
Dwight, it's a private sewer.
Why is ours private but nobody else's?
I don't know. I can't answer that.
Okay.
It may have been the developer of the subdivision never intended for it to be public. I don't know.
no, I just had a quick question. I had been told a while ago that if, I don't know if it was a City of Reading ordinance or something beyond that, but if a neighbor's tree was hanging over your property, that you had the right to trim it back, just the part that's hanging over your property.
You typically have the right to trim overhanging branches back to the property line.
Yeah.
But that's something that she needs to deal with private counsel on. I can't sit here and represent her on that.
Well, they told me because the percentage of the tree is greater on my property than it is his, that if we trimmed it, it would kill the tree, then I would be liable.
Wow.
That's something that you have to decide between you and your neighbor.
Okay.
Other audience participation? Going once, going twice, seeing none. We're gonna move on. Reading of communications.
I do actually have a communication. We received a nice letter from a Kevin Dixon addressed to the regarding the Reading paramedics. It just says, "To whom it may concern, for the last 10 or more months, my wife, Patty Dixon, who passed away on May 31st, was seriously ill, and Reading paramedics was called to our home numerous times. Many times those calls resulted in a hospital stay, but there were other times when the medical assessment revealed stable vitals, and just knowing she had been checked out alleviated her fears, and we were able to avoid a hospital visit. Regardless of the situation the medics faced when being called to our home, everyone, every time, went above and beyond to be patient, kind, compassionate, reassuring, and professional. They were always ready, willing, and eager to help and provide the care services that were needed. They never lost patience or made us feel like a bother. I cannot thank them enough. Sincerely, Kevin Dixon."
Motion to accept the communication?
Receive and file?
Receive and-
Second.
We have a motion to receive and file made by Mrs. Edichico, seconded by Mrs. Kroger. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries by voice vote. Any other communications?
No.
Okay. Guest speakers, no guest speakers scheduled. Executive session, none scheduled. Any need for one? Seeing none. Legislative session. Reading of resolutions. We have no resolutions unless somebody brought one. Seeing none. Ordinances.
First ordinance, an ordinance establishing the regulation of the planting, removal, and management of trees on public rights-of-way in the city and to establish certain standards.
Discussion?
Continue.
I do have to say, after reading this over and hearing everyone speak, that I do feel like this is very broad. I'm not in favor of an entire ban. I do like the idea of maybe a permit process over a list of acceptable trees, and working with We Thrive. I think there is a way to do this, and definitely not to discount the benefits of trees and street trees and the energy costs, shading, and the aesthetics of the street. So I don't know if this is a first reading is what is intended, so that's really all I have to say about that.
If I could provide a little background. So with all the money that was spent on Thornridge to widen the street and take out all the trees to open that up, Mr. Ross came to me and asked about this possibility. The goal is to say that basically the space along Thornridge is narrower than it was before by 1.5 feet. It's not only about 5 feet. And rather than try to get into being the tree police, the idea was to just tell people they can't plant trees along that area between the street and sidewalk. Front yards along the street are 30 to 40 feet. There's, in most cases, there's plenty of room to plant trees in the front yard, and nobody's saying you can't do that. In fact, by this, you could actually plant them on the other side of the sidewalk if you want to. But the goal was to protect the sidewalk. A number of the arborists I've talked to over the years have always said that in urban environments, that urban planting is a 20-year proposition, that you should always plan on getting rid of whatever it is you planted at least 20 years, about 20 years from the time you plant it. At the same time, the best time to plant a tree is 20 years ago. So the tree is always either too small or too big, is pretty much the case. We're trying to get into the city not being the tree police and having to maintain the trees in the right-of-way, which is also where you park cars. And a lot of people said their cars get scratched when they park there because the trees hang over the street. If the wrong tree is planted, it does buckle the sidewalk eventually. And so that was the goal was not to say that we're going to take down all the trees in Reading and make our streets barren, or to take down existing trees that have already been planted. The goal is to say basically, it was really intended to direct the attention toward a street that's been redone recently to keep it in the shape it's in so people can walk safely, push their strollers, ride their bikes, things of this sort. Because I actually did a face plant on Thornridge before the sidewalks were redone, when I was running. And so that was the intention. This is a first reading. This is to discuss if we need to make some modifications to it. If there's a way of saying that better, then of course we're open to that discussion.
I got a comment, Mr. President. If you go up Hunt Road, just east of McGuire Lane, there's a prime example of why there should not be street trees under power lines, because Duke has topped this silver maple tree numerous times. Now the tree looks like it's just, it's falling apart. It's been that way for 50 years. But it looks horrible. But, we have no control over that. The person planted the tree many years ago. It is a street tree. I think that maybe, I know what you're trying to do, and I applaud that effort, but I think the problem, as hearing the people talk tonight, is you're trying to fix a problem on Thornridge that was there before, goes back to the early 90s. but I don't think you can just put a broad stamp on the whole city just because of what happened on Thornridge or Hunt Road or wherever. You know, the trees, for the most part, on Benson Street and Reading Road have worked well. I know that the arborists were, said that the Cleveland Select pears are the best trees to do on Reading Road because they go straight. They don't get real tall, but they don't branch out. If they do, the trucks will trim it for you. I remember many years ago, our service department trimmed the trees on Benson Street. And it was on the news the next day how we killed all the trees on Benson Street. They're pear trees. I have to trim my braver pears in my front yard every 6 years. If I don't, I'll lose them because they don't hold the weight. But I think we may want to revisit it and try to tone the rhetoric down a little bit. And maybe just say, this ordinance is only for Thornridge Drive. And, you know, if that's what it takes, I don't know. I'm not the tree police or anything like that, and I don't think you are either. But I know what you're trying to do, and I applaud the effort, but I think it's got to be more centrally located, because what happened on Thornridge is not the same thing as Sanborn or Krylon, East Crest, West Crest, or anything else. In some areas, there is no right-of-way. People can put trees all the way out to the curb if they want to. That could be a problem too. But you know, maybe we have another meeting about that and try to hash that out before we have a second reading.
And there are varieties of trees that grow smaller. We recognize that, so that's why it's up for discussion.
Yeah, I'm with Mr. Boehner. I'd want to hold off on this. I know when they redid the curbing on Trillium Court, they took down all the trees, similar to the way they did with Thornridge, though there wasn't a real problem with the sidewalks, and we didn't widen the street at all. And honestly, that canopy of whatever, it took away my wife's favorite part of the view, just looking up our street, and it didn't seem to be there was any real gain from it, so I understand the danger that some people are feeling right now. But I think there's a happy middle ground.
One of the difficulties on Thornridge. Sorry.
You're on 3, you only get 2.
Oh,
Any other comments from other members of council? Okay, so I see 4 people already who have reservations on this. Let me suggest that somebody make a motion to table, and then it can go back to committee and be completely reworked with everybody's input and then brought back to
I'll
council.
motion that we table it.
Okay. So a motion from Mr. Bishop, second from Mr. Bronner, the beehive over there, man. To table the ordinance, we'll have to take a roll call on this. Mr. Powell,
Yes.
Mr. Bronner,
Yes.
Mr. Bishop,
Yes.
Mr. Boehner,
Yes.
Mr. Tomlin,
Yes.
Mrs. Kroger,
Yes.
Mrs. Edichico.
Yes.
7 yes to table, so it's tabled. We'll, I agree with the comments that have been made. So it's probably the best way to approach it. Not a
It is.
bad basic idea, but better language. Okay. The second ordinance?
An ordinance authorizing the Safety Service Director to enter into a natural gas aggregation agreement with a supplier recommended by Energy Alliances and declaring an emergency.
Any discussion?
Just feels like we've already done this ordinance, haven't we?
Well, there's no dollar amount set for this yet, but it states it's going to be lower than what Duke has presented. So it's certainly going to be a lot higher than we're paying now. That's a sign of the times, but.
I think the first one expired, possibly.
Yeah, we pulled, the first one got pulled back because of.
It got pulled back because
Related to
the
the-
market was way out of sight.
Right.
Gotcha.
Is there any urgency to get this passed tonight?
It does say in here that the ordinance is hereby declared an emergency measure for the reason being so the prices can be locked in as quickly as possible.
I'll make a motion if we suspend rules, required second, third reading.
All right.
Second.
So we have a motion by Mr. Boehner, second by Mrs. Kroger, to suspend the rules requiring the second and third readings. Roll call, please.
Mr. Powell?
Yes.
Mr. Bronner?
Yes.
Mr. Bishop?
I recuse myself.
Oop, yeah, okay. Mr. Boehner?
Yes.
Mr. Tomlin?
Yes.
Mrs. Kroger?
Yes.
Mrs. Edichico?
Yes.
6 yes, and rules are suspended.
Move
Motion to adopt.
Second.
So we have a motion to adopt by Mr. Powell, second by Mr. Boehner. Roll call, please.
Mr. Powell?
Yes.
Mr. Bronner?
Yes.
Mr. Bishop?
I recuse myself.
Mr. Boehner?
Yes.
Mr. Tomlin?
Yes.
Mrs. Kroger?
Yes.
Mrs. Edichico?
Yes.
6 yes, motion carries. Ordinance number, please.
2022-20.
Very good. So for those of you in TV land who heard Mr. Bishop recuse himself twice, that's because he has a conflict of interest and he knows it, and he's taking the correct step in not discussing the ordinance or voting on it. Thank you, by the way. Miscellaneous business. Any?
You all got a flyer here from the Ohio Realtors. I met with her last Friday. I was a real estate agent. They had my name. And it's just more of an economic development deal, what they can do. And I gave her Linda Fitzgerald's name, their economic development. But it's interesting reading if you want to read about average number of people driving through Reading. That's where there's a lot of stats in there that I find interesting, but also it would be beneficial for somebody who wanted to put a retail establishment on Reading Road, this kind of information. So that might help Linda a little bit, trying to sell up a couple lots down there.
Yeah, get that to us.
Yeah.
Any other miscellaneous business?
Mr.
Ron.
President, I'd just like to announce a Finance Committee meeting on Tuesday, June 28th at 6 p.m. That's all I have.
And that's here, or?
Yes,
across all?
let's do it in chambers.
Okay, so June 28th, 6 p.m. here in council chambers or across hall, depending. Finance meeting. Others?
Mr. President, I'd like to announce the next meeting of the Utilities, Lands, and Buildings Committee is going to be immediately following the Finance Committee meeting.
So 6:30-ish or 6:15. I'm not sure how long that first one's going to last.
6:10, whatever it takes.
So immediately following. Any others? All right, seeing none. We're on to adjournment. I hear that there's a desire for a committee of the whole or council of the whole. If we want to adjourn to a council of the whole.
I have one comment before we do that, if I may.
Yes, go ahead.
My mother-in-law, Joan Hurst, passed away on Saturday, and she was born and raised in Reading. She raised her family in Arlington Heights. 3 of her children now live in Reading. My wife, Karen, her daughter, Joyce, and her husband, Dusty, and her son, Tim, and his wife, Joyce. She was a very neat and special woman, and she was 98.
Absolutely. Our condolences, Dave.
Thank you.
98, that's a good run.
She was a sweet lady.
Okay, do I hear a motion somewhere for adjournment to committee of the, or council of the whole?
I'll make that motion.
Second.
So motion by Mr. Boehner, and a second by Mrs. Edichico to go council of the whole.
Kroger.
Was it
It was me.
Sorry.
That's all right. I was gonna let her have it.
We'll go, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So we'll go into council of the whole.
I'm going to leave. These things can be passed down. Dave, one of those passed down.
All right, very good. Kicking it off, I think from the last meeting, I'm gonna throw it right back to Mr. Bronner. Turf, and let's make sure we're talking plastic versus Northern California Sensimilla.
Right, we were talking about field turf, and we had some discussions about that, but nothing yet has been finalized on that, and I think, maybe we need to revisit the figures since they were done in October of 2021. I'm sure things have changed as far as that goes, so still looking into that.
Okay. Any other remarks on the turf issue? I I see none, so moving on, other people had a desire for a committee or a council of the whole. Mr. Bishop, did you have a particular? Nope. Mr. Boehner?
Yes. Hey, Bo, before you get out of here. Sure. I'll write this up, but the no parking signs got to get it back up on Siebenthaler, 7 a.m. to 4 p.m. school days by August the 15th.
It's staff meeting this morning, John Vance, they're gonna be working, again, remarking school zone. But tell me specifically and I'll call John. What
Okay.
is it,
Well, it should be on the west side, but it could be on the east side. Well, the west side is where the signs used to be. But between 7 a.m. and 4 p.m. on school days. There could be a lot of buses going up there, so it'd probably be a good idea to have no parking on the other side of Siebenthaler.
okay, so it was no parking, 7 a.m. to 4 p.m.
During school.
I'm sure, John, I would be certain they still have those signs and.
I'm sure they do.
We'll check, yeah.
And I know they took the OSH sign down, but the pole is still up. But here's an interesting topic. Where that sign there's 3 street trees been put up recently, and you can't put a sign up now because you can't see it for the street tree. The pole's still there, but the pole had to be removed so they could put the Cincinnati Classical sign up with an arrow pointing at Siebenthaler. You know where,
We'll have to look, see if this is private property, city right away.
it's all city right away.
Are you sure? Okay,
Yep.
okay.
It's at the house just east of Gill Tiergarten, I think is where it is. If they call me, I'll show them where it's at. I thought the pole was down, but the pole's still there. They just planted a tree on each side of the pole.
Well, if you would, call me tomorrow morning. I'll have Patrick, and you and I, and we'll get it down. And
I'll get tomorrow afternoon. I'll be busy tomorrow morning.
I think the speed hump signs on Thurmridge are gonna go up Friday. Maybe they'll be able to address some other signs while they're doing that.
Okay, all right. I did have, I'll call Pat tomorrow about a meeting next week. I got 4 or 5 items to talk about. There's no reason to bring it up here. I'm looking at this thing, I guess Dave put out about Dottie Court. If we're gonna talk about Dottie Court, we need to talk about Bolster Drive as well. Whether it's the baseball players or parents or the school parents parking in the driveways or blocking driveways on Bolster. It's just as bad as it is on Dottie and all the other streets. So we have a problem up there because of the sheer number of people. I don't know if, as far as Dottie and Julie Terrace and Trail Ridge, if we just restrict parking, no parking on those streets during school hours, that's one way to solve it. But I think you'd have to talk to residents before you do that, because that could put a hurt on some of the residents, especially on Dottie Court.
It's always a concern.
Yeah.
And I understand that concern, but I mean, we did take half of their parking on Columbia Avenue.
Yeah, well, I mean, we've always had that trouble on Columbia. That's why the last time they did, they painted more of the curb yellow, I believe. I wasn't involved then when they did all that, but, I think that as far as MND goes, I think we'd have to get with their administration to try to work on getting more parking. They've got property that they were gonna build parking on. I've heard about that for years now, but it hasn't seemed materialized.
Well, we are working, MND is working on that
Okay.
as we speak.
Okay.
And as far as the parking on Bolster, I could attest, and I'm sure you've seen the emails too, the school does send out emails reminding parents of the parking, and they've worked with the police department to have them up there patrolling. Obviously, our police department can't be up there every single day at drop-off and pickup, but
Right.
they have, and I know they have ticketed people for blocking driveways, parking in driveways, and parking where they're not supposed to be parking. So I know that the school is aware of it and is working on it, and I'm not sure if there's signs or not up there about the parking, but, I mean, they do send out emails to the parents reminding them, like, if you're gonna, you can't park legally. or you'll be
I got an email a couple weeks ago from a resident complaining about the people parking, not only blocking driveways, but in their driveways. Now, the other problem that I think is gonna get worse is the baseball fields. There's not enough parking at Hilltop Fields for the ball players and their parents. And they start parking on Bolster, Sanborn, Pompano, you know, that's gonna become a real problem. Because most of those streets up there that I mentioned don't allow for much parking on the street. They're not very wide streets.
Well, the school's already aware of that, and they are at least discussing more off-street parking. So they're at least discussing that.
Okay, all right.
M&D's well on the way to making it happen. They've already been through Planning Commission, and in fact, I think last time I saw Judy Gerwe here a week or two ago, I think they're working with their engineers to get an off-street parking lot. So I don't know how many cars, 70, 80, 90 more cars off, which hopefully will help Dottie Court. And Reading schools are at least getting into the discussion of more off-street parking for Hilltop Baseball Complex.
And I know part of the issue with the parking up there was the construction on Thorn Ridge. At the beginning of baseball season, there was about 3 piles of gravel taking up about 10 parking spaces there.
Pieces of equipment.
Yeah, backhoes and trucks and whatnot taking up about half the
But really,
parking.
by the time the baseball season started, Alita did a pretty good job clearing up as much space as they could.
Well, I can attest to that they were still up there because I spent many nights at that field. So they probably about halfway into the season, those spaces
I bet it was
were,
more than half.
yeah, those spaces were filled up. So, but I know the school has talked about now that the Thorn Ridge construction's coming in and looking at repaving that section of the street, looking at the parking and what they can do. So they, like Bo said, they are aware of it.
Yeah, some of that equipment was still there this week, so they're,
Yeah, I mean, dump trucks, you name it. I mean,
That's all I have at this point, Mr. President.
Any others?
Hey, the discussion on Dottie Court, I want to kind of just bring everybody up to kind of where we're at, and since you guys weren't here for last year when the discussions occurred, just to bring you up to speed. So the parking situation on Dottie Court has been and continues to be an ongoing issue in my ward. On August 7th, 2021, then Councilman Fischescher and myself canvassed the street seeking comments from residents on the parking and potential solutions. Councilman Fischescher discussed with the administration about limiting parking on one side of Dottie Court during school hours. The administration wanted to try a different approach with some targeted enforcement of the parking regulations at the beginning of the 21-22 school year and see how that goes. Parking issues for the most part at the beginning of the year were fairly tame, but seemed to increase as the year progressed. I attribute that to seniors that graduated freeing up many of the permitted off-street spaces, and as more sophomores became licensed throughout the school year, there seemed to be a higher demand for street parking. I received multiple complaints from multiple residents throughout the school year. Kind of in the last school year, been going around and just making observations from the area. All streets, and that includes Maple, Laurie, and Kenray, in the neighborhood, with the exception of Dottie, have parking restricted 24/7 on one side of the street. After observing Dottie on multiple days at multiple times of day and night, the issue seems primarily to occur during the school day. One other observations I had was Trail Ridge and Julie Terrace have signs restricting school day parking from Columbia to several doors down at the tops of those streets. Kind of looking at potential for residents for all-street parking on Dottie. 10 of the 15 homes before the cul-de-sac on Dottie have driveways sufficient to park multiple vehicles off the street. 5 of the 15 homes before the cul-de-sac on Dottie have driveways that could fit one vehicle off of the street. The topography likely limited how those driveways could be constructed. It was, as you get on the south side of the street, more towards the cul-de-sac, the slopes become increasingly steep, and there's no way they could, put a driveway in and go around the back. And another observation, because of the number of curb cuts, there appears to be more parking available on the north side of Dottie as opposed to the south side of Dottie. I've spoken with our fire chief on this matter, and he expressed concern about being able to get a fire truck or ambulance down the street because of the two-sided parking, and would favor having similar parking to all of the other streets in the neighborhood. The majority of the residents that on the street I've spoken with, including as recently as yesterday evening, favor restricted parking during school hours, similar to what is currently in place at the top of Trail Ridge and Jewelry. The other thing to point out, I know there have been a few occasions where the garbage trucks have had difficulties getting on the street and off the street this year because of the parking that is going on the street. So at some point soon, I would like to bring an ordinance to the floor to address the situation, but would like to have a healthy amount of discussion on the matter prior to doing so. So I'm calling out for, people to contact me, contact the at-large people, let us know. That way we can all kind of put our heads together and come up with a solution that's going to work for everybody. It sounds like if the parking is forthcoming, the additional lot, that this may only be a temporary thing that we would need to do to grant them some relief. So that's kind of where I'm at on it. So I don't know if anybody else has any comments or.
Well, just to comment, I think one of the things that led to Trail Ridge and maybe several other streets, people couldn't get their mail. So that's what led to those. Now, again, I'm not opposed to doing it on Dottie either myself.
Yeah, I know the Trail Ridge and the Julie, that came about when I was in high school. I do remember that happening. When I started high school, girls would park all the way down those hills, and if you've ever walked those or anything, you know those are very steep hills. And I know on more than one occasion, a girl forgot to put the emergency brake on her car, and it rolled down the hill into other people's cars and into people's driveways and caused property damage. I mean, this is back in the 90s. But so I do remember that being an issue with the city then, and then they came up with the idea to put the signs up and limit the parking. And also the same goes for Columbia as well, because we were parking all the way down towards Observatory Park and people couldn't get up the hill, and it was a mess. Not me.
In speaking with a resident on Dottie, if people park properly on both sides of the road, there's ample room for emergency vehicles and garbage trucks to traverse the street. I think the problem mostly occurs during the winter months when the snow's plowed and people are trying to, school kids possibly, trying to park on the street to make a space where they may be a foot or two from the curb because of the snow pile or whatever the case is, and that may limit the width of the right-of-way there down the street. So it could be a time of year thing. Young drivers typically may not park, close to the curb, who knows? But certainly an issue, absolutely.
It's something I'm very mindful of because of my own father years ago, is that a lot of these houses are close together, the streets are narrow, and when we have a lot of elderly people in the neighborhood, they have trouble backing out. They have to back out of their driveways because they can't turn around in the driveways, and so they're backing out. And when cars park directly across the street from them, and the street's really crowded, they have limited resources to be able to actually back out safely without hitting the neighbors' cars. And they don't want to hit the kids' cars. But I know my own father would have discussions with his neighbor, and the kids kept parking right behind his driveway. And he kept saying, please don't do that. I can't see, I'm coming up a hill, I can't see what's down when my car is tilted like this, backing up. And they just refused to even help out at all. So it is a concern, I think, with people.
Others on this topic? Anybody else with a different topic? Seeing none. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Motion by Mrs. Kroger to
Second.
adjourn, second by Mr. Bronner. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? We are finished. Have a good night.